Hi there, Randy Green here. Yesterday, I did a little podcast, a whole hour podcast on some of the processes and why it sometimes feels that we are walking uphill in our activation work, because there are some pretty dense configurations around us that in many ways and forms pushes us back into the base program, as I call everyday life. And we are working with these limitations in our activation work. And as you know, I'm a psychotherapist, so in that aspect of things, I am working with things as processes, and things here means life, emotions, thought forms, perception of reality as a core foundation of the inner narratives. And I've made a little blog post about that, and I know this is for Instagram, so the links won't work, but I will put them below anyways, and you can find what I am talking about on my two websites. There is the HAL Flow-Through Center, and there is the randygreen.one, that is the Whole Future Humanity website. The narratives and the psychological aspect I'm talking about here will be found on the HAL Flow-Through website, HAL Flow-Through Center, because there I am working more on the psychological aspect of our journey in the awakening process, whereas on the Randy Green, the Whole Future Humanity, there you have all the higher order sciences of your higher order energy system. That means from dimension 4 and up. But we are humans first and foremost, and this is where this little talk is going to center. I'm doing this as a little experiment because I'm always thinking, it would be so nice if I could go on social media and then get a little push in the morning to what's the day about? And then I try to put that into some kind of doing it every day note of information. And it just fizzles out because the days are fluctuating. Not every day is a day where I'm in contact with the progression journey itself. There are days where I am just completely caught up in the base program and looking above the normal emotional, mental, we could call it cognitive and mental processes are just unsurmountable, as in, I'm not walking up that hill today. I am just staying put in my valley where I'm just making things work. And that's part of the journey too. It's not always about sitting on the cushion or in deep contemplation and being in contact with the other worlds and the other levels of our energy system, where we technically pushes our body and the three lower fields to go into a steady state, so to speak. They become dormant, and then the higher order energy system can kick in and connect to the brain and to the heart, through the heart and the mind center, and there give us this higher order information and downloads, and we can view the other realities, and then we snap out of that, and that energy retracts up to the fourth or up to the sixth dimension, sometimes not fully, because it's always operational in some degree, all depending on how well we have trained the double awareness. So there will still be something left, which gives us the double side of this world and the other worlds, and coming and going, and being an open system of contact with other realms, while we're also being just humans inside the base program. And that takes training. It's taken me 10 years to learn to be in this world and the other worlds at the same time, and seeing things with a double perspective, as in I'm seeing this reality, but I'm also seeing the program behind it. I am seeing humans, but I'm also seeing parts of their soul structure that allows itself to be visible to me, so to speak, because not everything is visible. It wants to be seen. It's not something I'm doing, it wants to be seen. So in that way, I am in that realm. But if I, for instance, go to the mainland of the island and I am around other people, then I naturally align with that, because that's a part of an open system. This is the whole point of the HAL Flow-Through Center, and the ideas I'm working with there is the understanding of when we are in the world, we are interacting with it, we're interfering with it, and it interferes with us, and we align with it, because the entire structure we live in is made that way to push us into alignment with the surrounding energies. And yesterday I talked about In the lengthy podcast, I talked about how and now I'm already seeing, okay, 5 minutes, that's way too long for just a little push. And that means that this probably can't be for Instagram. Okay, I'm still learning, right? So if you're going to do it as a reel or whatever, but we'll see. So yesterday I talked about the understanding of the 9 layers of the Earth body. So, okay, I'm going to continue talking about this. So not Instagram then, apparently. I'll still train it. I might learn to do it short. Point being is that the Earth system that I have talked about, the Trinity system, the 3 lower fields and the middle and the upper levels of the 9th dimensional structure of the Earth body as it is for me as, I won't call myself a starseed because I'm of the 68. That's, if I'm anything in the days back in the 2000s where I was working with people who were within that community of indigo children and whatever, I would often be classified as a first seeder. And I don't know, it's a classification. I don't need a classification, but just so you know, if you are within that world and you are using that terminology, then that might mean something to you. But for me, it's just, oh yeah, I can see myself as a forerunner, absolutely, putting in ideas and seeding in concepts and doing that. But I don't see myself as a seeder from the star seeds, because my consciousness is linked to the future of a version of myself in the future that is purely human from this civilization. When I look in the past, yes, so we can call me an old starseed that has sprouted and grown into a solidified tree that is now losing its leaves. But in the future, that's a different version of me that's there, that's connected to me. Or it could just be some of the future civilizations that will be on our planet in the future, and there's not going to be many. That's why I've downsized it from humanities to humanity, because there will be a joint group no matter where they come from. Then what I'm connected to there, I know it's me because I can see it's a rebirth of who I am today, but at the same time, she's so very dissimilar. So that's interesting to have that bridge built into the future version of me and what I will become due to the work I've done in this life. As how it works, what you do in this life, what you vibrate into, you will become. So clearly, whatever I'm doing in this life, as things are right now, because I still have got a lot of good years, but if for some odd situation would happen that I would cease to be on this planet tomorrow, whatever, then that's who I will become. So I can look at that and say, okay, that's kind of okay. But still a little bit tweaked there. She's still working with the human aspect. And so am I. The 9 layers, the 9 dimensions of the human aspect. And I think that's good, because normally I just talked about the human aspect as the psyche and the cognitive processes, which are super, super, super important. That's kind of the hindrances that we're dealing with. The core foundation of our biology, and the biology that creates the core foundation of the psyche and the cognitive emotional processes, as we talked about, the 21 layers of the 3 lower fields, the biofield, the emotional field, the mental field, they're all working together, they're intercepted. And the 2027 transition point that I touched ground with yesterday, and I made the article on the 2027 transition point. I produced an article where it's very explicit what we have to achieve. And it might sound difficult or easier, or easy, all depending on where you are in your process. And then there is the 2029, and then there's the 2035. These are 3 transition points that are going to push those of us who are on this trajectory already, the subsidiary timeline, working with either the future humanity or as a starseed to get out of here, or a part of the whatever worlds that you will vibrate yourself into, because you're changing your core foundation of what it means to be human. So that's what we're doing here. No matter who you are, where we come from, this classification doesn't mean much other than they're a good tool when we're leaving the base program to become another version of ourselves. But once we have worked with that other version of ourselves, with having a different hat on, learning to view the world from a different perspective, eventually you have had so many different hats on as you unravel your core fields, the Trinity structure, the three lower fields, and you begin to connect to the other versions of yourself, of what you have been. Then you just learn that this is pointless. It's pointless to say, oh, I'm a Pleiadian. No, what it actually is kind of said, well, I recall past lives or earlier lives or other lives, what we could call it, as part of the Pleiadian system. For instance, I said yesterday in the other podcast, I have a recall memory of from the Pleiadian system, but it's just a short memory. But I can go into it, I can dive into it, and I can expand it, and I can investigate. I can walk in that memory, as in I open up that pattern and I can walk in that memory pattern and investigate it and see more detailed information. And at the same time, I have an activation of my heart field, and I get different types of downloads. I can expand it into, okay, I know I was doing that in that short memory glimpse, but if I investigate it, what am I? What's going on there? I'm looking at my hands. What am I doing in that? And then go into the sensation of that version of me. And then I can see, wow, that's such a different configuration. But at the same time, I can also sense this is a borrowed configuration. I'm only there for a task. So I have technically borrowed, quote unquote, a physical vessel in the Pleiadian system, meaning I'm not Pleiadian, but I was there for a time period to do a specific task. And this is where we begin to understand how the stellar realms work. They are not tied to their physicality as we are here, because they can engineer it. They literally have these different technology where you engineer a body artificially. There's no birth, there is no reproduction, there's none of what we are having here. It's literally, it's engineering like you engineer an android, except these bodies are not android. They are completely organic. Organic vessels can be grown in these machines that they have, and I choose to, we could call it a pod, and then you can investigate. That's where I can do, that's where I know this is a memory, because when I look at that pod, when I came in my other physical form, my other dimensional organic vessel, because it was organic and it was human in I had head and arms and legs, but I didn't have all of these weird stuff we have here. It just feels internally completely different. Have a language to explain that? No, but I know that the whole intestines and all of these things and food and whatever, no, didn't have that. So in that way, I feel this kind of purity when I connect to some of the other versions of me that I'm lacking in this body. And that gives me a kind of what we call a different perspective of the physical organism we have inside this reality, thinking, oh, that's a kind of a primitive engineering, very animalistic. And then I look at the other versions of myself and I say, yeah, okay, I can't be that because it's just a memory. But I can use that information to monitor the way I eat and teach my biofield. You don't have to rely on food in the same way as you do it in the other rounds, but I have to be high in energy so that my body connects to that and then feel the osmosis and the saturation of these higher order energies in the biofield, which then is not craving energy as we normally do from food. But when I snap out of the higher dimensional energy and I just become base program human, hunger arises and all of these things that are part of the Trinity fields. So that's part of the double awareness too. So looking at the pod and how that technology, I completely understand it in my mind. I have no words whatsoever to explain it. So that's part of being connected to the other realms where we are getting this what we call alternate interpretation of who and what we are and what we have been, the experiences we carry with us, and how we operate inside this reality. And when I connect to that, then the future version of me begins to fade away and change form and change direction, because now I'm pulling in past information that then amplifies my higher order energy system, make it vibrate in a different way, and then connect to it through my 3 lower fields. And in that way, changing the foundational configuration of who and what I am. So I'm playing with what we call multitemporal awareness to adapt my vibrational state. And that's the core in this. It's technically vibration, the radiation, because vibration in the way I work with things are connected to the heart field. That's the expanded field that goes from not the heart and not the heart chakra, but the heart vortex once it's been cleared of the chest quadrant, and we have moved beyond the hara quadrant. I talk about these in my book Torology and in the advanced energy work and the template sciences, and go beyond into activating the higher dimensional heart field that goes from the fourth dimension and up. It's not just about compassion. That's the activation. That's the in-between activation from your heart into modifying the heart chakra. It goes through compassion practice and modulation of that into a full activation into the fourth dimension, through where you go through past life and astral plane and all these levels. So clearing the heart field is a long process, from where you begin to ignite with a high vibrational state that will then begin to clear the head quadrant, activate the heart vortex and the brain vortex in cohesion. So they begin to work together, and then you expand your mind field as a radiation, which you will then create the vibration radiation. So vibration in itself is just the ability to vibrate within what we call the realms of existence. But the full understanding and capacity of working with that vibrational interaction potential comes from the mind field and the ability to radiate out and perceive and understand what you're actually coming in contact with. So when you resonate with something and get into interference with it, you use your brain field to understand what it is. And that's part of the journey that is the difficult part, where we train our brain to be able to assess and work with these downloads and these complex information and figure out a way to expand the field, which is called remote viewing in certain cycles. But it's part of the expanded awareness. You know how to work with your fields. And then I come back into the normal human body, go outside, go down to groceries or whatever I'm doing. I'm sometimes laughing a little bit because I'm fixing the sink or washing laundry or doing whatever I'm doing to keep and maintain my house and whatnot. And then go do groceries or go out for a walk or whatever, or talk to people. And at the same time, my mind and my field is sometimes connected to other realms, which I have learned that people who are not activated in that state, I shouldn't do it in that. And when I really activate it, I keep to myself. And that's normally where I do podcasts, because then at least it becomes real by me talking about it. I don't have a lot of people I can talk about this with, so I can explain what I'm perceiving and experiencing. But it's like, there's not many people who resonate and understand this level. So this is where I'm doing these little podcasts here and there. And in that way, it becomes, because when I talk about it, again, the psychotherapist, right? When I talk about things, then I put it into order. Then I contemplate on it while I address it. I'm thinking about it. I'm sensing. I'm working with it as I do with processes inside the base program. That's how I've always done, connecting to people. And when we talk to people, we have this interrelational field where we address who and what we are. We create narratives of who and what we are and our perception of reality in conversations with others. That's kind of what we do, right? So, and I'm then here where I'm thinking, okay, since it can't be an Instagram, where am I going to put this podcast? I think I will put this one on the HAL Flow-Through Center, because YouTube channel, because that is what this is about. And I'll also put it on the whole Future Humanity, so people will understand, okay, I'm now making a kind of a division of my material. The psychological aspects on it is on the HAL Flow-Through Center, whereas the hardcore science is, quote unquote, the other worlds, the other realms, and the sciences, and some of this is part of the whole Future Humanity. But there will be psychological aspects too, because I'm sharing it from my personal experiences. So of course, it has to be some way or form psychological, but the Flow-Through Center is the integration process of being part of an open system. Because when we work with the higher order energy fields, and we are in that higher order state where I often am when I draw information of extraterrestrials or other realms or whatever, I'm up in my higher order energy system, which is what the whole academy is all about. So it fits there. And the purpose is, as I saw many years ago, is that the Future Humanity, when they first began traveling back in time, they had lost that completely. So that version of me, the reason why she chose to do this traveling back from the human future is because there are only 5,000 people left at that time in a very cold and desolate solar system, just so you know. And they discovered that they were stuck. They had technology and have technology to travel to other parts of the universe, but it's desolate there as well until they really figure out this is about internal vibrational states of awareness that enables us to open up to the other worlds. And then we can modulate our technology to be able to travel what we could call consciousness distances. So that's where the human part of this becomes super important, why the integration part of our higher order awareness becomes the most important thing that we are to focus on with the 2027 transition point. Because that, I'll put the link below to all of these articles and what I'm referring to here so you can study it yourself, because you should study it. It's important. It's not just about feeling and experiencing. It's also about understanding the cognitive part of it, where we integrate this science into our neural network so we can radiate the neural network, change the synapses into a higher order capacity, change the neural network, the different layers of it, to also expand beyond the limitations of the 9 fields of the Earth scheme and into the other worlds, because we need to leave this Earth scheme at some point. And that does not go through technology and propulsion and 0-point energy. It goes through consciousness. So that's why they've been traveling back. And they too have done what we call epigenetic modulation, but through merging with earlier versions of themselves. So you see, if she had not connected, I would still be stuck in all of my past lives and clearing that as part of the completion cycles, dealing with the Earth scheme and whatever body I'd come into. But she comes from the future and she has a very specific, this needs to be done, not because she's telling me like a higher self or anything. But the psyche naturally, the brain naturally does this. It registers. It's an interesting experience. My mind and my entire structure says, that's me. And then I look at it, no, that's not me. What's going on here? My psyche gets all confused. So in that way, I'm just working with that one and saying, it's okay. And I'm investigating. I'll keep a little bit of a distance as someone who's very familiar. But at the same time, I'm fully aware. Could it be interception technology? Is it true? Is it someone who's trying to scam me? Is there some kind of extraterrestrial technology going on? Is there a cube technology here? Are we in the 4th dimension? Are we in the 5th dimension? All of that is going on while I'm in this interaction with it. And at the same time, my heart field reacts to it. And then I'm saying, okay, have there been a kind of bug implanted in that gives me these sensations? It's an artificial energetic parasite, and I'm clearing in that one. And then it subsides for a while, and then it comes in on a different level. And then I keep working with it. Oh, there's a mantis there. What's going on here? Perhaps I'm actually being fooled a little bit here. Are they creating a holographic overlay? Interception technology, where they're fooling me to believe something else is going on, and on and on and on and on and on. The same with the past. So that's where you become savvy in doing the inner contemplation work, where you really begin to understand the right questions. That's why the studies of the high order sciences are important, and doing the clearing work so you have a foundational understanding of what is yours and what's been inserted. It still has to be work with all the same, even though it's inserted. It's not just kind of, oh, I'm ignoring it and then it goes away. No, of course not. It's like if you have got an artificial leg that has been put onto you, if you don't remove it, it will remain there, right? So we have to deal with what is present in our fields. And that's part of the open system. That's part of the flow-through understanding, that we are flowing through different concepts or different modalities of experiences that are tied to our energy system, that are tied to our consciousness potentials, that are tied to our 3 lower fields, where the whole open system integrative processes that are part of this progression is where we learn to work with the double awareness, but expands it into the multitemporal awareness, where we begin to really work with how do I use the multitemporal awareness to actually assist my system in growing. And I have made another paper that's kind of multidimensional contact, where I work with the multitemporal aspect of it. And I'll put a link to this one below in this. And the reason why I'm not putting it all on the HAL Flow-Through Center website is because I have downsized it to only 5 pages, so I don't have to pay a lot of money to keep that one going. So all of it will be, it's kind of a hub that refers to the randygreen.one, where we have the entire library, everything you want to know, external blog posts using the free resources that are there, and then tie into other podcasts I'm doing other places. So those of you who are listening to this podcast on this channel, because I decided it will go on the YouTube channel on the HAL Flow-Through Center, then you will know that you will have to investigate the links to get the background information. And I will put them below, and see each one of these podcasts as an internal study of who and what you are and how you learn to work with multitemporal awareness. And not just multidimensional. Multidimensional is what we do on the randygreen.one, where we learn to work through the many dimensions of who and what we are. The open integration process is where we learn to work with past, present, and future versions of ourselves. So we integrate that as part of this open system, where our field is no longer about, I'm investigating reality of what it is, because that's the randygreen.one, where you travel through the pillars and what were supposed to be the past, learn to work with the principles, the rules, and the laws to reconfigure your entire energy system. Then you transform it into the Flow-Through Center, where it then becomes, okay, now I have created my higher order energy system. I'm connected to the past versions of me. I know what's mine and what's not, what I was and what I wasn't. And I see the future versions of me because of that, because I always said, as you know, back in the days, in the old videos, were back in 2013, they're no longer out on the YouTube, but there are remnants of this as part of the HAL Academy free teachings, where I there talk about that as once we clear the past, we will become more present in the now, but we will also begin to connect to past versions of ourselves and dissolve what is no longer of use on the timelines through the vibrational field. That's the extended version of the heart field, clearing the chiasm, as I talk about in my books. And then once that's done, then we begin to connect to the next version of ourselves. And I'm still stuck on this planet as things are right now. And then I can make that decision through the multitemporal awareness of the past, present, and future versions of myself. I can look at myself in the present, and that's why the psychological work becomes important, because I look at myself and I'm saying, okay, the way I respond here, does that create that vibration that I need to connect to the future versions of myself? And I can see the future version of myself, that the reason why she's still around is because there's this, and this I haven't figured out how to clear or work with. Or if you could say, well, I choose to be there in the future. Well, that's kind of a write-off of responsibility in my rule book. So I'm all about this kind of foundationally, I don't really want to be here in that future. But of course, if I am, I am. It's not that I'm going to say, like a 5-year-old and get a tantrum. So I'll just have to look at that. So it's there, but I also have to investigate if it is an artificial intercepted of my future code stream interception from some of the mantic groups, because it keeps coming up. So I have to investigate, is it there because it's collaborating with the future humans? Because I know they get in contact with some of the groups from the future Andromeda system. But the mantis, as far as I know, not part of the Andromeda system. So there's learning lessons here. So either way, even though I see the mantis, it's not just going away, because when I was in Australia, I got in contact with a lot of mantids. They are governing quite a lot of projects down there, including in America as well. But they're not particularly present in Denmark. Let's put it this way. We've got other groups here we're dealing with. So point being is, what is that doing there? But I know some of these mantids are part of some of the military programs. So I'm wondering, could that be an interception of some of these? And I say military, and I mean military from the other factions, the hidden civilizations that are influencing certain covert programs inside our reality. I'm not talking my lab here. I'm talking about something completely different, which I learned about in Australia, as well as through interaction back in 2017 with some of these groups in America. Okay, so we're talking different things here. This is a little bit beyond what you normally encounter, where you are taught that people inside the base program are doing this and this and this. It's much more extended than that. It's much more complex. And as they always say, these people who are talking about these, I am not of liberty to talk about these things right now. I can neither confirm nor deny it. So point being, I'm just seeing it's there, but it feels like a soul mantis. So the whole point is it interacting with my future interaction, the multitemporal stream? Is it part there because it's investigating? So all of these things, I'll have to look into what's going on there. I'm not just taking things face value. That's the what we learn from the multidimensional awareness of where we're traveling, artificial fourth and fifth and all these things. We learn about the advanced races that are here as part of the artificial fourth, which is on this process of collapsing. The cube technology of the old Atlantean timelines in the fifth dimension, which is just literally just simulation programs and technology. It's not much life forms going on there except from different simians, organic and non-organic beings that are upholding the fifth, and some shadow beings that are left over from the old Atlantean timelines and fragments and whatever. And then going into beyond the Earth scheme, which, as I talked about in the other podcast yesterday, is, very fragmented. Not going there. But then I follow my own consciousness. You see, that's the whole purpose. When we're just doing the external dimensional thing, we'll end up in dead ends. But if we follow our own consciousness structure within our own local advanced fields, then we move beyond the limitations and the boundaries of the Earth scheme. And that's probably where the mantids might be watchers. They might be those who are guarding that threshold. It could be 1,000 things that I need to investigate, because there's a lot of quote unquote guardians along the way. As you expand your awareness and you work through the dimensions, you will have these guardians that are there that tells, I am your guardian. Okay, you're my guardian. Are you here to guard me from harm, or are you here to guard me from actually expanding my awareness? That's the good question we always have to ask. So multitemporal awareness are deeply rooted into our psychological structure. And that means who we are here. And that's why I made that next level where we really begin the integration process, where our psychological integrity and our ability to deal with whatever we come in contact with is part of multitemporal awareness, where we have the readiness to experience and understand what we're dealing with, similarly as we have the psychological readiness to our interactions with other people, how to navigate that, how to navigate our internal structure, how to navigate our trauma, how to navigate past life trauma, etc., and learning to deal with this psychologically. That's the flow-through idea. Because once we get the multitemporal psychology up and running, which I'm in the beginning of, so I can't tell you the solutions, because there are no solutions in psychology. There are different ways we can work with things, and there are different interpretations we can have around it. And there are different thought forms and narratives that we can build around it, but they are all associated with our own personal experiences. And then, of course, if we want to, like I'm doing here, I'm trying to extract something, okay, here I'm the black swan, right? So I'm trying to extract it into so it matches the white swans. And the funny thing is that black swan analogy actually comes from some philosophy from the Middle Ages or 1800, whatever, in Europe or around in Europe that hadn't visited Australia, where most of the swans down there are black, actually. So it doesn't really fit. I always found that a little bit interesting, how these, you could be so localized in your perception that you think it applies to the entire world. And I'm not doing that, but I'm trying to pull some meta threads that would make sense to you in your journey. But you have to explore all this for yourself. That's your journey. What are you going through? What's that? And that's where I talk about in the few sessions I will offer. There are a few left this year, 2026, because I need to take care of myself. I because of my own processes, my bandwidth of also holding other people's processes is narrowed until I got this sorted. And then once I get this sorted, then my bandwidth will expand again. And then I can look into, okay, how many can I take in and have conversations with? How can I share this? Because I'm still under the ancient rules of the first of many, right? for the highest good of the many. So everything I go through and I experience, and when I work through the principles with it as part of my integration process and the rules of engagement and the natural laws of energy, in that is implied it has to be shared for the benefit of others. Can't just do it for myself. Then we fall into the trap of what happens back in Atlantis. So it's always the heart field, the compassion, the understanding, the expansion, the vibrational extension has to be there, where this is enveloped and affect other people in a positive manner, not just through my voice, which is technically connected to the mind field, but also through the actual contact of some sort of push that helps others to grow as well. So that's part of what we used to be. That's part of how we used to operate before things went south and it just became survival of the fittest, right? All right. I think that will suffice for this little tiny thought process, because that's what I will share, thought processes, because that's all I have to share. I won't put myself in a position, I got this, I got the solutions. No, I'm in the middle of a process. I just initiated it. But raw data from our own processes carried forth through all of the many, many years of experiences I have and all the material I've made and all the ways I put it together in a larger system allows me to say, well, I actually have something to offer. I'm not just putting out trash here. I'm actually offering something that, even though it is part of my process, it can be diluted into some kind of generic traits that most of us will go through. Perhaps not the specific experiences, but the dynamic behind the experiences. And that's what you do in psychotherapy as well. You are saying, well, it's how people experience these things are individual for their own internal structure and their childhood and whatever they are, the cognitive schemes, that's individual. But there are generic traits that we see again and again and again in different peoples who are dealing with this. And we do the same when we talk about the multitemporal awareness in the open system integration processes. There are generic traits, that means they're common for all. And then there's a highly individual way of how we do it. And that's okay. And that's what these conversations are about and these investigations. Okay, I can resonate with that. That makes sense. But how do I then adapt it so it fits me? And that's where, as we also know from psychotherapy, that one of the largest thing about therapeutic processes is that you are sojourning that process with another person. You have a witness. You have a co-sojourner that gets you, that understands you, that contains you. And that feeling of not being alone in the process is giving that core foundation that keeps pushing you forward. Because when we're alone and we're in doubt and we feel lost and we have no one to confide to and nobody understands us, we get quickly aligned with the different deception technologies, and I call them the 7Ds, that goes into depression and denial and distortion and all these different Ds. I talk about that in my older material. You can look into that somewhere, somehow, whatever. But point being, these are cube technology from the fifth dimension. That's part of the way that the mind field is locked down to not expand it beyond the earth scheme. So you see, these are the prohibiting technologies. They go through the fourth and the fifth. And the reason why we need to learn to deal with these, at least those of us who are from the old civilizations that came under the colonization, because we are completely imbued in these technologies, whereas some of the star seeds from the other systems, they don't have that. They are working on a different, what we call merged in dimensional inner world of a different type of parallel universal matrix or other types of interception technology, fourth dimension and fifth dimension. So their experiences are completely different. So again, listen to the people who are similar to you. Compare yourself to what resonates mostly with who you are. That's the first step of this not sojourning alone, finding that illusionary group, that other group that talks language that resonates with who you are. So you at least say, okay, this I recognize. So I'm clearly not alone in this. But you have the understanding that you are alone in this. This is your journey. But there are others that have similar journeys. And there we create this, what we call, that's part of the resilience hub of the future. That's part of the things from the future. The resilience hub that we might not have people physically present. There might be a little bit here and there, but it is when we work multitemporal and multidimensional, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of distortion. And once we begin to open up our fields, this contact with other people that are at different stages of their journey, there is a transference going on there, and that's complicated, and we are barely having enough with our own fields. That's also why I retract from time and I help the much I can, and then my fields are just they get so scattered by, because I'm working not only on my own but also on the one I'm talking to. Not that I want to, but that's how the high order fields work. They are interfering with each other. They leave imprints in each other's fields. They are affecting each other. We're not closed bubbles. So once we begin to open up to the multidimensionality, whatever a person is working with is in that person's fields, not because that person is bad or anything. It's just how it is. And the other one that might have gone a little bit further ahead or have cleared these aspects, sometimes it won't affect us, and other times it will have a huge impact, because we're still in the same pattern ourselves, our version of it, and dealing with it. So just in normal psychology, you have two people who have PTSD from some let's just say some old military duty or whatever. Some of it they share because they've been, let's say they have been if they have been stationed at the same place, then they have the joint experience they can share, and by that support each other. But there will be distortion there, because they would have experienced it differently. They would have, unless they're on the exact same spot, experienced the same IED and onward and so forth. Then they have a lot of common ground. But if we take two people, one is in one sector and the other one is another sector, and they have two different experiences, but they still have PTSD as a common ground, then their connection where they can support each other is not that big, because the explanation that they have to give each other can be therapeutic to a degree, where they compare war stories, but at some point they need to be, as in then the internal structure and the pattern they're trying to unravel and clear of distortion is then too dissimilar. And then psychologically it becomes more of an effort to actually join up than a healing process. There has to be similarities before the healing can really kick in. We know that from psychotherapy. And that's also why a psychotherapist has to match us and have to have a foundational understanding of what we're talking about, because otherwise there's not a joint field. The interrelational field is not there. It's too dissimilar. And that means that we have to use too much energy to explain what it is, and we feel too dissimilar, and our nervous system will respond to that and saying, I'm already dealing with my own trauma, I'm barely surviving here, and here I have to use all of that energy to be understood. So that's also why when we do both the multidimensional and multitemporal journey, we will have to navigate in that realm of what to share and what not to share, who to rely on, who not to rely on, and not expecting other people to meet us where we are, because they simply become too dissimilar. And then the transference that will happen at some point, where you know that we used to call it energetic vampires, but it's not always like that. It is just a natural dynamic of, once that begins to vibrate in transformative processes, will naturally begin to transform in the surroundings. That's how it was built. The first of many for the highest good of the many, right? That's part of the Pillar Project, that we would do it as a team. But if other people are not doing it, then our open system technically becomes a burden for us. And that's why many who do this work retract. Just look at Buddhist monks and monasteries and people throughout human history at some point going into caves and whatnot, just to retracting from the base program. There's a reason for that. And that's part of our journey too, how to navigate in a very noisy world, compared to the ancient times where things were not so noisy. And it was easier just to be a wanderer on the path and literally just wander in somewhere in the southern hemisphere with a weather that was suitable for that, and live by a bowl of rice here and there, and just share a little bit of information here and there, and then retract out into the wilderness. In the Western world, we don't have much wilderness, do we? So it's a whole other integration process. All right, I think that is what I want to share here. There's a lot of loose thoughts here, and I will tap into them as I move further into some of these more psychologically explanatory processes compared to how I used to explain it as part of the higher order energy system, where we were doing the multidimensional higher order sciences. Here we are working with the multitemporal integration processes. Pay attention to the difference here. You begin with the other dimensional because that's how you build the external as you do as a human being, where you adapt your psychological structure to the external environment. Then you learn to retract from the external environment, begin to work backwards, inwards and back into your past lives on your psychological structure that then expands into the dimensional fields, clearing them on the timeline structures. Then once you're done with that, you go into the multitemporal, where you begin to observe who and what you are here and in past and in the future, and then you begin to truly work with your consciousness aspects of understanding how consciousness then impacts your local field and the fields of others, as well as the reality field. But the reality field itself is not the key factor here, because we know where things are going. So and at this point you have learned already through the multidimensional awakening process how to deal with other people and how to be the right type of energy configuration in contact with other people, understanding completely where they are and what you should do in that moment. And then it goes back into you as a multitemporal existence that really works with the understandings of your continuation process as consciousness. So this is where most of the multidimensional processes and the traditional expansion goes through different forms and states of energy where consciousness operates. Here we have learned the energy already in the multidimensional aspect. So now we begin to work with how do we adapt consciousness on its own without contact with energy per se. There will always be contact with energy, but the key focus here is we now know how to work with energy in a multidimensional version and within the 9-dimensional Earth scheme. How do we integrate the consciousness of our core essence of the past, the core essence of the present, and the core essence of the future? How do we grow consciousness now that we have transformed energies so we produce that future version of what we call life force? And that's the medium that we are to learn to travel on. And that is a composition of consciousness, radiation, and vibration energy working as a trinity. So that's a whole other transformative process that we're stepping into when we begin to talk about the open system integration process. All right. I'm pretty stoked about this. This is good. So that excites me. So you see, that's where we get, this is a push where we can, yes, I nailed it. So now we get excited. And when we get excited, that's because we got flow. So that's the key. Where we do the multidimensional, we get a heart field and a brain field and knowledge and expansion and resonance and all these things. That's energy. But when we get consciousness, we get flow and we get excitement. And I know I sound a little bit like Bashar here, but they are not far off. They might be from the future of some of the hybrids and work in a different world and whatever they're doing there. They have now gone through all their stages and now see it as their job because they have discovered too the laws of the first of many for the highest good of the many. If they want to go through their boundaries, any civilization that continues to progress will at some point discover that they have boundaries around their reality field. And the only way to go through these thresholds is to learn for the highest good of the many, because that's the foundation of these 12 universal cycles that we're part of. I talk about that in the whole academy and in all of the 6 modules that I keep repeating it again and again and again. And until we learn that lesson, we will be stuck within our different bubbles of reality energy where consciousness will be dependent on that type of energy, or that often turns into technology or whatever. Moving beyond the threshold of the energetic foundation of all reality constructs built by the ancient ones is the true understanding of first of many for the highest good of the many. The rules, the laws, and the principles. And lucky for you, It's all in the whole academy. You can get all of that knowledge there, and then you can adapt it into how you are choosing to do so. All right, so now you kind of get my 2 websites and how we're working in tandem with that. RandyGreen.1, library, all the foundational knowledge from the 4th dimension up. Multidimensionality and the understanding of the sciences of the multidimensional reality field configuration, how consciousness plays around with that. Open systems integration processes is where we work multitemporally with who and what we are. We have a foundational understanding of a lot of things, but now we really work with the core self and our nine-layered earth scheme to begin the old processes of vibrating, radiating, and working with life force, the true understanding of how to use energy correctly in all ways and forms, so that we can connect to the consciousness aspects of who we were, who we are, and who we choose to become in the future. All right, and with that said, until next podcast, take care.